NFL Week 1 is officially in the books, so in today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my reaction to every single game of Week 1. Now, in case you guys want to see my predictions for Week 1, these are my picks. I think I had a pretty solid week overall. Now, I am recording this on Sunday, and the video will be coming out on Monday, so unfortunately, I will not be able to put in the Jets versus 49ers game in this specific video. But in case you guys want to know my opinions for that game, I will be making a community post right after the Monday Night Football game. With that being said, we are going to begin with the Thursday Night Football game and then go through every single game. I'll try to make it as quick as possible so I don't keep too much of your time. Let's hop into the video though. So our Thursday night matchup game was between Baltimore and Kansas City. I've already made a video from the point of view of the Baltimore Ravens, so in case you guys do want to check that out, I'll have it pinned up at the very end. Just make sure you guys stay for the rest of the video. But to kind of summarize my thoughts on that game for Baltimore's perspective, I thought there was a lot of missed opportunities in this game for the Ravens. Obviously, the last drive of the game was the biggest missed opportunity. You had several chances to actually win the game, but you didn't. But I still feel as if there's a lot of things that you can take away that are also positive. Isaiah Likely looks like a star. Zay Flowers looks really good. And I think that there were some things that they could definitely take away from this game, such as using Derrick Henry more. However, the offensive line did look bad, and there's definitely some questions on the defense, but I think overall for a Week 1 performance, they're not necessarily too upset about how they performed. Then from the perspective of Kansas City, this is the Chiefs that we all know. They played exactly like how they did last year, but I will say they look a lot more explosive in that receiving room. Rashee Rice looks dominant. Xavier Worthy looked explosive. It's just a better version of Kansas City that we're going to see this year. Then on Friday, we had the Brazil game between the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles, a game that I thought was really fun, but also extremely sloppy. Starting off with the Green Bay Packers perspective, to be honest with you guys, I don't really feel like there's a lot of things that you guys should be that mad about. It was a close competitive game with one of the best teams in the entire NFL. For me, the only thing that I really took away from this game from Green Bay is that I really do hope that Jordan Love is not going to miss more than 3 weeks, because if he does, it could get a little bit harder for this team to make it into the playoffs. With that said though, Jaden Reed had a really positive game. He had over 130 yards and a touchdown, so maybe he is sort of separating himself as being that true number 1 guy. And I also feel as if Josh Jacobs, as the game wore on, started to play better. And then there's the Eagles. The number 1 takeaway I have for the Eagles is Saquon Barkley was such a good pickup. He did work in the receiving game and of course in the run game, finishing with over 3 touchdowns. And as long as Saquon can stay healthy, this could be sort of like a Christian McCaffrey going to San Francisco type of deal. When it comes to Jalen Hurts, I thought he was very sloppy with the football early on, but as the game wore on and as he got more comfortable, he definitely looked better. With that said though, there were multiple fumbles, 2 interceptions, and they definitely have to clean that up. But to be honest with you guys, I think as long as Philadelphia stays healthy and as long as they can not turn the ball over too much, this looks like it's going to be one of the better teams in the NFC. But now we get into our Sunday night games, and oh my god, we are going to begin with probably the most heartbreaking game of the week, the New Orleans Saints versus the Carolina Panthers. The final score was 47-10, and even though I did think the Saints were going to win, I did not think they were going to kick their ass as badly as they did. Let's start off with Bryce Young. I'm going to be making a video on this team probably by the time you're watching this, probably tomorrow. And let's just put it how it was. It was extremely disappointing. Bryce Young looked pretty damn bad. He threw 2 interceptions. Both of them were clearly his fault. And he just didn't look comfortable behind a decent offensive line. And to be honest with you, nothing else really went their way. Yes, the Panthers defense was god-awful, and they might be the worst defense in the NFL this year, but the offense was also horrific as well. The newly brought in receiving weapons really didn't do too much. Jatavion Sanders, the new tight end, had 1 catch. Deontay Johnson only had 2 catches. Xavier Legette had 4 for 35. And the 2 leading receivers were, yet again, Adam Thielen and Jonathan Mingo. And when it comes to the run game, they couldn't do really anything. Their best running back this game was Miles Sanders, who only had 22 yards on 5 carries. And basically everything that could have went wrong. Again, I'm going to be making another video kind of going into more detail about this game for the Panthers, but this was as bad of a performance as I could physically imagine for what I thought was going to be a better team, but this was really bad. But then there's the Saints, 47 points against a horrible team. Derek Carr finished 19 for 23 for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. And you could make the case that he looked like the best quarterback in the NFL this week. He's obviously not the best quarterback, but this was an awesome performance from Derek Carr. He got multiple people involved, whether it was Rashid Shaheed or Chris Olave or Alvin Kamara or whoever. This was a team performance that I thought was really sharp. Offensively, they were able to run the ball effectively with Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams for those short yardage type of gains. But really, where this team shined the most was defensively. They forced multiple turnovers. They made Bryce Young extremely uncomfortable in the pocket, sacking him multiple times. And again, this was just a team performance that I thought was really impressive for New Orleans. Then there was the Vikings versus New York. The final score was 28-6. We'll start off with the New York Giants. Similar to Bryce Young and the Panthers, extremely disappointing. Bryce Young looked just as bad as Daniel Jones last night. Daniel Jones was 22 for 42 for 186 with 2 interceptions. And essentially all the same offensive issues they had last year felt the exact same this year. They couldn't run the ball effectively. Outside of Malik Neighbors, nobody really stepped up big time. And the offensive line, yet again, still had issues. He was getting sacked multiple times and wasn't really giving the time to dissect the defense and do much of anything else. If there was really sort of any positive that you could take away from this game, as I think Deonte Banks looked pretty decent for the most part in this game. He obviously had, I think, a touchdown scored on him, but I thought he played all right. And then, of course, Malik Neighbors looked good, but basically everything else looked just as bad as it was last year. And then there's the Minnesota Vikings side of things, and I think you have to feel pretty happy if you're a Vikings fan. Obviously, you're not going to be competing for a championship this year, but you saw what you wanted to see. Sam Darnold played effectively. He was careful with the football. He did have the interception, but I thought for the most part, he did a really good job of just taking care of the football and playing within the system. Aaron Jones in that run game was very effective throughout the day. Aaron Jones on 14 carries had 94 yards and a touchdown. And when you're in an offense with Justin Jefferson, you really have to feature him as the premier guy, and they, of course, did that. Overall, I felt like this was a very impressive performance for Minnesota. Obviously, nothing to write home about because this was a bad team they were going up against, but still a quality win. But then we have the upset of the week with the New England Patriots going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. I really thought that Cincinnati was just going to put the beat down on New England, but boy, was I wrong and was like everyone else. We'll start off positive here with the New England Patriots. You beat a good team and you ran the ball effectively. Ramondre Stevenson had 120 yards. And even though Jacoby Brissett wasn't great, he also was solid. He wasn't turning the ball over. He was making good, quick decisions. And none of the receivers really looked great, but I felt like Jacoby Brissett did a fine job. I also thought the play calling was sharp throughout most of the game, and defensively, they were damn impressive. I think defensively speaking, Jawan Bentley looked fantastic. Jabril Peppers looked solid throughout, and even some guys like Marcus Jones had some plays made as well. And in a game where you scored 16 points, you're able to hold your opponent to only 10. So you got a victory in a game against a very quality opponent. Really, there's no complaints to be had here. Nothing really went wrong. Again, I don't think this is going to be a good Patriots team, but you got a week 1 win against a quality opponent. So shout out to you guys. Then there's the Bengals side of things. I will definitely be talking about them throughout the week. This is point blank simple, completely inexcusable for the Bengals. I get it. You start the NFL season typically pretty slow, but you're going up against maybe the worst team in the NFL, and you just put up a complete dud. Joe Burrow was 21 for 29 for 164 yards and 0 touchdowns. By the way, he's on my fantasy team, so I'm pretty pissed off with Joe Burrow. He was very cautious with the football, basically always threw it underneath, took really no shots deep, and just didn't look like Joe Burrow today. The run game wasn't that bad. Zach Moss did have 44 yards on 9 carries, but it didn't also help the offense. I thought the offensive line looked good at points, but also wasn't that good. And yes, they were missing T. Higgins, but you also had Jamar Chase. And to be honest with you, it's inexcusable to lose this badly to a team that is not good. But moving on, we had a game that was unbelievably boring, but also really fun. And that was the Falcons versus Steelers game. I did predict this one wrong. I thought the Falcons were going to play a lot better, but they played really bad. Starting off with the Steelers, their player of the game was clearly their kicker. He made so many field goals and played his heart out. I mean, that was the best performance I've seen from a kicker in a couple years. But when it comes to the offense, they were able to move the ball fairly effectively. They ran the ball quite well. Fields had 14 carries. Najee had 20. Offensively speaking, I thought for the most part, they were able to do their job for the most part. George Pickens made a bunch of big time plays. He had 6 catches for 85 yards, made some big explosive plays, while he also made a couple of really dumb plays, but it's George Pickens. He usually does a very good job. Outside of George Pickens, there's still a bunch of question marks about who can be the number 2 guy. Nobody really stepped up. It was Pat Freiermuth who was mainly the second option today. So I do wonder when Russell Wilson does come in there and plays more of a typical drop back pocket quarterback who's going to be their second option. But in a game like this, it didn't really matter that they couldn't score touchdowns. They were just able to move the ball close enough to kick field goals, which got them the ultimate win. Defensively, this was an impressive performance from the usual guys. TJ Watt was spectacular. Minkah Fitzpatrick had a good game. And everyone played their part in what was a pretty easy victory against the Falcons, because for the most part, the Falcons just kicked their own ass. Going to the Falcons here, Kirk Cousins played a really poor game, especially in that second half. He was 16 for 26 for 155 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. And even though Bijan had a good game, I didn't really see the Bijan that I wanted to see. He only had 68 yards on 18 carries. Again, he wasn't the reason why they lost, but I want to see more from Bijan. And in the passing game, your number one wide receiver was Ray McLeod. This is the same offense with Darnell Mooney, Drake London, Bijan, Kyle Pitts. Bijan had 5 catches for 43. Kyle Pitts did have a touchdown, but only had 3 for 26. And then Drake London, 2 for 15. Inexcusable. That cannot happen. I know the Steelers have a good defense. You got to get him involved in some ways. And defensively speaking, I thought the Falcons did their job. They held them to field goals. Obviously, this was not going to be a very heavy pass offense with Justin Fields, but even when they did try to pass the ball, they were able to shut it down pretty quick. So I thought the defense played all right. You still lost, though. This is a really bad loss in a game where they gave up 6 field goals and still managed to lose. And then there was the Texans versus the Colts game, probably my favorite game of the week. I really did enjoy this matchup. I thought it was a really good duel between 2 young quarterbacks and 2 young head coaches. Houston won 29-27. This is kind of how I thought it was going to go. I had it being a really close matchup with Houston winning, but I'm still really happy with what I saw from both teams. For Houston, CJ Stroud looked like CJ Stroud. He was still very good, sharp with the football. He had a couple turnover-worthy plays, but for the most part, played pretty clean. He had 2 touchdowns for 234 yards. And I think the story of the day for the offense of the Bengals was Joe Mixon. They ran the ball 30 times. Unfortunately, I benched him, which was so stupid of me in my fantasy league, so I will definitely be starting him next week. He had a monster game. He was basically the only guy who received any carries. And in the passing game, you saw a good combination of everyone getting receptions. Nico Collins was the number 1 guy with 6 catches for 117. And then Tank Dell was able to put in some work. There was a couple missed plays from Stroud in there. I think there was one play specifically where Tank was wide open or had a really good shot to make a touchdown that he missed, but that's okay. And then Diggs, despite not having the most yardage, was very effective when they got into the red zone. He did have 2 touchdowns. Defensively speaking, for the Texans, I want to see more from this team. This was a really solid defense last year, and I did want to see them take a big step forward. I don't know if I saw that in this one, but there were some good plays and some good players that I liked. I thought Will Anderson was solid for the most part. Derek Stingley, I thought, had a good game. But I left this game feeling a little bit underwhelmed with the defense of Houston, especially when you look back and actually watch the game. The amount of times Adonai Mitchell had wide open touchdowns that just Anthony missed was pretty inexcusable in my opinion. And then, of course, the Colts. They didn't really pass the ball all that much. They only threw it 19 times and only had 9 completions. So this was a really run-oriented offense, but despite that, they were still able to put up 27 points. They ran the ball effectively. I thought Richardson looked really good in some spots, but really bad in some other spots, which, to be honest with you, is kind of what I expected from a quarterback who's coming off a major injury and also playing his first real game in quite some time. On the day, he made some incredible throws where he threw the ball like 50 yards in the air and the guy made a play. Those were awesome plays, but he also had a bunch of missed throws and some missed opportunities. So I feel like if you're a Colts fan, you got to feel pretty happy about what you saw, even though you lost this game. But let's move on to the Arizona versus Buffalo game, a game that I was really close to predicting accurately. I thought this was going to be a close game, and ultimately it was a close one. On the day, Josh Allen looked pretty good for the most part. It was a little bit of a slow start for the team. They didn't score anything in the first quarter, but then they started to pick things up and play a little bit better as the game wore on. And I think that kind of followed suit with Josh Allen. He was ultimately on the day. He had 232 yards for 2 touchdowns. And you saw a lot of the Josh Allen experience. Some really weird, bad throws, but also a couple of really solid throws and some solid plays. Ultimately, this was a game where Arizona had a chance to win, but Buffalo did just enough to win this one. I don't really have too many concerns about Buffalo from this one. I think the receivers looked pretty solid. They were able to create some separation and make some big explosive plays. And I thought the offensive line did a good enough job of opening up run lanes and giving Josh Allen some time to run and throw the football. But then there's Arizona, and to be honest with you, Arizona really could have won this game. They played a really good game early on. They were running the ball effectively. James Conner was looking really sharp. And ultimately, they were just kind of able to hang around the Buffalo Bills for the majority of the game until they had the ball late with like 2 minutes, and Kyler would miss Marvin Harrison on a wide open touchdown. Now, sticking to Marvin Harrison Jr. here, he did not have a good game at all. He had one major drop and only one catch for 4 yards. And what I thought was weird about this game was late in the game, when you would think that he would be targeted a lot, where you think that he would be the #1 go-to guy, Kyler Murray wasn't even looking his way. Like that final drive, every single time Marvin Harrison was lined up on the right side, Kyler would drop back and just immediately look left. He didn't even hardly look his way half the time. So for anyone who's worried about Marvin Harrison, I think as time goes on, he'll receive more work. But this was a little bit of a concerning start to his career, especially if he wants to have a productive 2024 season. Ultimately though, for a Cardinals team that was major underdogs, they were able to stay in the game and be competitive, and hell, they almost won this game. But then after that, you had the Chicago Bears versus the Tennessee Titans, a really weird game. This was a game where Tennessee was up big time early, and then they completely just fumbled this game away, sometimes quite literally. Tony Pollard was running the ball effectively early on, Will Levis was making the right plays, and everything seemed like it was going well. You guys were heading in the right direction, you guys were stopping the Chicago offense, you guys were moving the ball effectively down the field, and then it was like a flip of a switch just happened out of nowhere. Because after that switch was flipped, this offense was just horrific. Will Levis threw multiple interceptions, there were some fumbles, the pressure was consistently on Will Levis, and every issue that could have popped up. I mean, you even had special teams issues that led to a touchdown. And this was a game that, in all honesty, was hand-wrapped gift for a Tennessee Titans win. Caleb Williams in his first game had less than 100 passing yards, and yet you still lost. That's got to be a major disappointment, and if I was on that Titans defense, I would be extremely, just really upset about how this game went down, because for the most part, they played a sharp game defensively. It's just everything that could have went wrong, went wrong. And then there's the Chicago side of things. On one hand, you have to be happy that you got a week 1 win, but on the other hand, you have to be extremely disappointed in a lot of things you saw. Let's be honest, it basically took a miracle for you guys to win. This will not happen the rest of the season. And if you're going to have a game where you cannot run the ball effectively, if your offensive line plays as bad as they did, and if Caleb Williams can't stop running around in the pocket looking like an idiot, then this team is not going to be good this year. Now, I'm going to hold off and not say that's going to be a continuous issue, because this was Caleb's first game, and I do expect him to play better. But again, if you're going to see more of this from Caleb, then this is a massive, massive issue. Ultimately, though, you won the game. You got to feel pretty good about the win, but moving forward, this team has to play better, because you have to expect more from this team. Then next up, there was the Miami Dolphins versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. I did predict this one wrong, but I was actually pretty close. Jacksonville started this game off extremely hot. The offense was moving up and down the field. They were able to get some big chunk plays, some nice solid runs, and everything was going smooth and fine until the second half happened. They did have some good drives, but ultimately no points were put up. Then they had that massive fumble with Travis Etienne that kind of put the nail in the coffin. I thought Trevor looked good, especially early on, but as the game wore on, the defense adjusted and Trevor started to play worse and worse. I also thought the offensive line looked very bad in the second half, which is a bit of a concerning issue for this team. And even though I thought the Jaguars defense played good, I definitely think they could have played better. They gave up way too many explosive plays to mainly Tyreek Hill. So for the side of Jacksonville, I think you have to feel okay with this game. Like, obviously you're upset that you lost, but you still held a really good team to 20 points and you could have won this game. But on the other side, you had a win in your hands against a really good team and you kind of blew it. Then there's the side of the Dolphins, and you played decent. You could have played way better, but you got a win against, in my opinion, a really good team. I thought Tua was really bad to start the game off, but I think as the game went on, he started to play better and better. And I still think there needs to be work on the offensive line, because the offensive line was not playing good at all. But as long as you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, which, by the way, I hope he's okay, then I think this team is going to be fine. I think the big highlight player of the game that I really want to give a credit to, because I think he played a massive part in this victory, was Devon Achane. He wasn't able to run the ball effectively. He only had 24 rushing yards on 10 carries. But when it comes to the passing game, he was really their third option in this game, which is going to be really good for anybody who owns Devon Achane in fantasy, but it's also going to be really good for the Miami Dolphins long term. So you got to win against a good opponent, and now you're going to have to go up and play even better against even some better teams. But now we enter into our 3 o'clock game, starting off with the Broncos versus Seattle. We'll start off with Seattle because they started this game off basically as poorly as you could literally imagine. They had a safety early on. They also had a second safety later in the game. Geno had an interception early. There were some fumbles. There was just everything that could have went wrong. Whereas for Denver, early on, everything was going your way. Your quarterback was playing safe football. You were able to move the ball somewhat effectively. Your defense was creating turnovers. You got some safeties. You were kicking the field goals. I mean, everything was going fine until Seattle woke up and actually started to play like a potential playoff team. On the day, I thought Geno Smith was fine, mainly in the second half. He was pretty bad early on, but I thought that second half, when the game plan got a little easier and he was able to make some easier reads, I thought he played better. And a big highlight of this game for the Seattle Seahawks was their running game. Kenneth Walker finished with 100 carries. I do think moving forward, I want to see them utilize his speed a bit more. Get him out in space, put him out on a screen, maybe some dump off passes to him. He needs more work because he's a really special talent. And in the receiving game, it was okay. I want to see more from Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's a really talented player that only had two catches on the day, but I want to see him get more production as the game wears on. And defensively, I thought you were fine. Again, your offense puts you in some really bad positions, so you did force a bunch of field goals, but at the same time, I thought it could have been better. Credit to Julian Love, by the way. He had 10 tackles and one interception. He had a great game. And then there's the Broncos. Again, everything went really well early on until Seattle kind of woke up. Bo Nix was good-ish early on, but as the game wore on, he looked like a rookie quarterback. He made 2 really bad throws that would be interceptions. One of them was in the corner for a touchdown that got picked off. It should not have been thrown. There was like 2 guys on, I think, Cortland Sutton on that play. And the second one to me was even more inexcusable. It was a play action rollout. He's rolling out to, I think, his right, and he throws the ball in triple coverage. Inexcusable rookie mistakes. That's got to be cleaned up because that was a really bad look for this offense. The running game wasn't there. The offensive line didn't play that good. The receivers were okay, but I think you got to give credit to this Denver defense. They were actually able to do a lot of good things against what I think is going to be a really solid offense in Seattle. So you lost the game, but I still think there's some positives you can take away. Obviously, the biggest thing that you need to be a good team is for Bo Nix to not play like a rookie quarterback. You got to see him play better. Moving on was the Raiders versus the Chargers game. As you guys know, I'm a Raiders fan, but I predicted the Chargers to win, and of course, I was right. And let's just put it how it was. The Raiders played like shit. They couldn't run the ball effectively. The offensive line wasn't that good. Gardner Minshew looked as average as I thought he would. And really the only offensive player that I have any sort of excitement about is Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers. Basically everything that I thought was going to happen, happened. The offense could move the ball somewhat effectively, but they couldn't finish drives. They were consistently stuck around the middle of the field. And that interception from Gardner Minshew just wasn't a good interception. Ultimately, I think this is going to be a lot of what you see from this Raiders team. Good defensive performance, but the offense can't put up points, similar to last year. Then the Chargers perspective, you didn't play that good either. It just so happens that you went up against a bad Raiders team. Herbert was okay. He was very safe with the football, a lot of underneath plays, some screens, some really easy reads. He finished with only 144 yards on 17 receptions. But the big story of the day was J.K. Dobbins. He had 10 carries for 135. He also had a touchdown. And in the past game, you saw some progress from Quentin Johnston. He didn't look great, but he didn't look bad. Ladd McConkey also had a touchdown, so shout out to him. The big story of the day for this Chargers team was that their defense was lights out. Again, you're going against, in my opinion, one of the worst offenses in the league in the Las Vegas Raiders. But Joey Bosa, who was able to stay healthy, put on a good performance. Khalil Mack looked good. Morgan Fox looked good. But yeah, as a Raiders fan, I'm not surprised. This was a really bad performance from the Raiders. Moving on now to the Cleveland Browns versus the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas would win this game 33-17, but the actual score was really like 33-10. The Browns put up a late touchdown to make the game look a little bit more respectable, but it was a complete dominant performance from Dallas Cowboys here. Starting off with Dallas, this was a weird roller coaster offseason for Dallas. They did not have much activity until kind of the last couple weeks. They re-signed CD like a week ago, and quite literally today, they paid Dak Prescott. By the way, quick thoughts on that. I thought that was the right move. It actually saves them money for next year, so they'll be able to pay a guy like Micah Parsons. On the day, Dak was solid. I didn't think he was great, but I also thought he was really sharp with the football, was very accurate, made the right plays, didn't force the ball down the field when he didn't have to, and I thought for the most part, they just played a really solid offensive game. They didn't run the ball that effectively, but they were also fairly efficient when they tried to. They were able to move the pocket for the most part to help out your young offensive line, which, by the way, I thought the young offensive lineman looked pretty good. And the offense felt pretty similar to what you saw last year, which is a really good thing. CeeDee Lamb looked like CeeDee Lamb. Brandon Cooks got comfortable very early on, which is a good sign for Dallas. And the offensive line was pretty sharp. Really, the highlight of the day was the Dallas Cowboys defense. Really, the past couple years, they have been so turnover heavy. If you couldn't get turnovers, then the defense wasn't good. But ultimately, Dallas was able to force turnovers. And even when they weren't forcing turnovers, they really shut out this Browns offense. Whether it was forcing fumbles or getting some interceptions or just being really solid and sound fundamental football, they did a very good job against the Browns. That being said, the Browns offense isn't that good. Now on to the Browns. This was a really bad start to your season. Obviously, you had the 2 tackles missing, which was a huge story in this game because Micah Parsons basically wrecked your entire game plan. And the offense just couldn't move the ball effectively enough. I thought the defense did some good things. They definitely weren't good, but they definitely weren't bad. And if the offense just sort of had any resemblance of life, maybe they could have won this game. But ultimately speaking, Deshaun Watson was terrible. The offensive line was even worse, and there was basically no run game. There was also an injury to David Njoku, which could potentially be big issues for this offense. And unless this team can bring back those tackles soon enough and find some sort of run game, this could be a bit of a weird year for the Browns, a year in which they're going to have to be carried by their defense. Ultimately, though, this was kind of the nightmare start for the Browns. We'll definitely be talking about them throughout the week. Next is the Washington Commanders versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought this was a really interesting game. I'll say this bluntly, I thought Washington was going to come in and upset the Buccaneers, but I was completely wrong. Starting off with the Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield looked damn impressive. He was clean and crisp with the football, very accurate, was making good, sharp decisions, finished the day with 4 touchdowns. And I really don't have enough kind words to say about this Buccaneers offense. They played really solid. And on the defensive side for the Buccaneers, they had a really tough matchup going up against this rookie quarterback that can just run all over the field. But I thought they held their own mainly in the passing game. Definitely some things they want to clean up. Like I want to see better rush lanes. I want to see them finish sacks. I want to see them finish tackles better. But for the most part, I thought they were really sharp. And again, I thought the offense was really fantastic the entire day. That being said, Washington just might have one of the worst defenses in the NFL, so take that as you will. And then there's Washington. I really thought that Jaden Daniels had a really good game. He played very similarly to like Lamar Jackson in his debut game. If you guys don't remember, in Lamar's first ever NFL appearance as a starter, he was 13 of 19 for 150 yards, and he rushed for 117 yards. And on the day, that's kind of what you saw from Jaden Daniels. He didn't throw the ball quite efficiently. He was 17 for 24 for 184. No touchdowns, no interceptions, but a lot of his work was done on the ground. He had 16 carries for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. And given the fact that he was going up against a good opponent, I thought Jaden Daniels looked good. And I would venture to say that he looked like the best rookie quarterback that was on the field this week. So if you are a Commanders fan, I feel like you have to be pretty happy about what you saw. Obviously, a lot of things you have to clean up, especially defensively, but you really wanted to see Jaden Daniels looked good, and that's what you got. And lastly, we had the Detroit Lions versus the LA Rams, a game that was between 2 teams that met last year. Obviously, the Lions got the better of the Rams last year, and today they had the exact same result. This game felt pretty similar to last year, where both teams were playing really good, but just a couple of mistakes on both sides allowed the other team to get some advantages to win the game. Starting off with the LA Rams, I thought Matthew Stafford played a pretty solid game. Obviously, he had that one bad interception, which was pretty inexcusable, but for the rest of the game, he was playing at a very high level. The run game was led by Kyren Williams, who got 18 carries, but was extremely inefficient with his carries. He only had 50 yards on the 18 carries. That being said, he did get a touchdown and was clearly the #1 guy, so I do expect to see some more production from other guys like Ronnie Rivers and hopefully at some point Blake Corum. But as of right now, Kyren is a starter. He was going against a very tough Detroit Lions defensive line, so it does make sense why he wasn't the most efficient. Then in the receiving game, Cooper Kupp really had a big, massive throwback type of game. This was obviously his best game that I could think of in quite some time. With the injury to Puka Nacua, which is a really worrying one for the Rams, I do expect Cooper Kupp to be able to grow into his role yet again. With that said, I was a little bit shocked that Jordan Whittington wasn't involved in the offense all that much. He did get one carry on the goal line, but ultimately it was called back because I think of a holding or some sort of offsides call. So moving forward, I wouldn't be shocked if Whittington slowly starts to get his way into the starting lineup, especially if Puka were to miss a couple of games. I thought the defense was fine. They gave the offense plenty of opportunities to make plays. They got some interceptions, and I thought the secondary made some good plays. Obviously, this is a defense that is very young, has a lot of newer players, so I think give the defense a couple more weeks to gel and mesh and get better. Then there's the Detroit Lions. The Lions obviously had a very similar game plan to that playoff game. They wanted to use their offensive line, be physical, go downfield, and go downhill. And ultimately, that's what happened in this game. Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery ran for 28 carries. Montgomery was the leading back with 17 carries for 91 yards, and Jahmyr Gibbs did damage with 11 carries for 40. Both the running backs received significant playing time, as well as both got touchdowns. It's pretty clear what role both these guys are playing. Gibbs is the change of pace back who's going to come in and take all the receiving work, whereas David Montgomery is, of course, the bruisier back who's going to be in on 3rd and shorts, 4th downs, and even 1st and 10s. And I think the big standout of the game was Jameson Williams. He had 5 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown, and if he can stay healthy and continue to play like this, that's really going to open up a lot of different possibilities for this offense. In this game, Amon-Ra, who was like a top 5-ish receiver, only had 3 catches for 13 yards. I thought he was open sometimes, and I thought that Goff was missing him occasionally, but for the most part, I thought the Rams did a really good job of game planning against him. But that obviously did allow other players like Jameson Williams and Sam Laporta to play at a very high level. Defensively, Aiden Hutchinson continues to prove that he is a dominant defensive lineman. He's one of the best in the league, and I thought today was pretty good evidence of him being that guy. And then I thought Alex Anzalone had a really sharp game, and Terrion Arnold, I know he had a couple plays given up, but I thought he had a pretty solid day as well. All in all, I think these are two obvious playoff teams. I would not be shocked if these two teams were to meet up in the playoffs again. And I think for both sides, they have potentially a chance to maybe make a deep playoff run. And maybe in the case of the Lions, maybe go into a championship run. But that is going to complete the video. If you guys did enjoy, hit the like and subscribe button. And I love you guys. Peace.